So my biggest concern coming in here filming with the A6700 is that last time I was here, I was filming with my FX3, which never overheats. But for the first time ever, the overheating warning came up. It never shut down, nothing happened. But I'm thinking if that camera had that issue, I'm sort of scared that this is going to overheat very quickly. But yeah, I guess we'll soon find out.
12 seconds later.
See? It's already on.
Okay, do that one more time. Just gonna, I'll get my focus ready. Oh, it just shut off.
The Sony A6700 is a hybrid camera in more ways than one. It's good at filming, obviously, but also at taking photos and even live streaming. But as a professional sports videographer, I want to dedicate this review to the camera's video capabilities, especially while capturing a sporting event. I want to have a look at the image quality, I want to know how user-friendly it is, I also want to know how big of an issue the overheating truly is, but most of all, I want to know if this is a budget camera or a professional one. Because it does have all the same specs and then some as the Sony FX30, which many sports videographers, including myself, use professionally and are very happy with. But at the same time, it is $400 cheaper, so there must be a reason.
So my original plan was to shoot with the A6700 in 4K 120, but during warm-up, already I had issues with overheating, although I kept this little door closed, which my friend / cameraman over here told me was a bad idea. He also lent me this, which is the Ulenzi external fan that is very practical for these type of cameras that have no fan. So I'm gonna start without it. At the moment, the camera's off. I think I'm gonna stick to 4K 60. Oh no, I'll try 4K 120 anyway. We'll see how long it goes, but yeah, as soon as it starts overheating, I'll put this guy on to see how much juice we get out of it. And yeah, so we're testing a lot of stuff today, basically. Yeah, I think the issue really was that this thing was closed because I started filming in 4K 120 again since I mentioned it, and everything's been fine, no warning, no nothing, so let's see how far we go. It's halftime right now, so I've been filming in 4K 120 this entire time. It's actually been good. The camera hasn't shut down on me. I was turning it off basically every time there was a timeout or in between quarters, but yeah, it's been good. But I also realized I forgot that there's a big crop when you're filming in 120 with this camera. It's a 1.5 crop. So I'm gonna go back to filming in 4K 60, which will give me a wider shot and also is gonna help with overheating issues. So yeah, second half, the quality of the image should go up, so it'll be fun to compare the two actually.
Just as I expected, the image quality at 4K 60 is much better than at 4K 120. And that's obviously because of the extra 1.5 crop at 4K 120. The extra crop introduces more noise or grain, even though I'm currently shooting at a native ISO. But I'm not sure most viewers will actually see the difference in image quality if I mix both 60 and 120 frames per second footage in the same edit. As a matter of fact, let's test this theory right now.
I go the hardest. I bring the pain. Not what you used to. It's all part of the game. Yeah, I just gotta go hard. I just gotta go hard. Go hard. Go hard. Go hard.
All right, so now that I've had the chance to play around with this Sony A6700, I want to talk about its image quality, I want to talk about its user friendliness, and I want to talk about who this camera is actually for as far as sports videography is concerned, of course. But before I get started, I just want to mention a couple things. First of all, I'm not going to dissect the menu or go through all the features. It's just not that type of video, and there are plenty of good ones available on YouTube already. For example, Mark from the Mark Bennett's Camera Crisis channel has a bunch of videos about the A6700. He talks about features, he goes through the full menu, even compares the camera to a bunch of similar ones. The man's a machine.
Here we go.
Mark is also the reason why I was able to do this video, because through him and a few other people, I ended up meeting a Sony rep here in Montreal. We met in person. She's cool. She gets me. She gets my channel. So you can expect to see a lot more Sony camera reviews in the near future on this channel, maybe even Sony lenses, as long as it makes sense from a sports videography perspective, of course. But as usual with these types of videos, Sony didn't pay me to do this. They just let me borrow the camera for a while and then I have to give it back. They won't see this video before you do, so there's absolutely no way for them to control or influence what I say or what I do. All right, so now that this is out of the way, let's talk about the camera. And let's start by acknowledging the fact that as far as APS-C cameras are concerned, this is as good as it gets in terms of image quality. The Sony A6700 and the FX30 actually have the best image quality of all of Sony's APS-C cameras. And it's literally a tie at the top between those two, because they both have the exact same sensor and produce the exact same image. They also both have the ability to record in 10-bit color. They both have dual native ISO, with the first native ISO being at 800 and the second one being at 2500. They can film in 4K 120, and of course they both have things like 5-axis image stabilization, amazing autofocus capabilities, and all the latest Sony picture profiles. So yeah, all that to say that you can't fault the image quality of this camera. Of course you could do better, especially in 4K 120, but for that you need to spend a lot more money on a full frame camera. For example, the Sony ZV-E1, a very similar camera in terms of features, but with a full frame sensor instead, that camera cost $2,200. Meanwhile, the A6700 only costs $1,400, $800 less. So better image quality than the one produced by this camera obviously exists, but it's definitely not cheap. When it comes to its user friendliness, I really like this camera. I like the size, I like the weight, I like the grip. All of it feels good for someone like me with relatively big hands. I also like the menu because it's that new Sony menu where all the main settings that you need to adjust during a shoot are all in that summary in the first 2 pages, so very easily accessible. And there's also more than enough customizable buttons on the camera body, so you don't really need to go in the menu at all during a shoot if you don't wanna. The only real issue with this camera, and it is a big one, but the only real issue with this camera is the overheating. To the point where I think that it is also the deciding factor when it comes to putting this camera in the budget category or in the pro category. Because if you think about it, all the features of this camera, except maybe the sensor, depending on who you talk to, but really all the features of this camera scream professional. But at the same time, if you can't rely on the camera to be there for you for the entire duration of a sporting event, how can it be considered a professional tool for sports videographers? At the basketball game, once I opened the LCD screen and allowed the hot air to circulate properly, The overheating wasn't too bad, but it was a constant worry because the overheating warning signal was on most of the time. So basically, every time there was a break or a timeout, I would turn my camera off and use the Ulenzi fan to cool it down a little. I didn't use the fan while I was filming because the little suction cups that are supposed to keep it in place don't do a very good job at it, and you really need a rubber band or something to keep it in place, which I didn't have. But ultimately, by taking breaks like that along the way, my camera was able to survive and film half a game in 4K 120 and the other half in 4K 60. But my camera did start shutting down towards the end of the game, so it was basically this sort of dance where the camera would shut off, but then I would be able to turn it back on straight away, film for a couple minutes, then it would shut down again, and I would go back and forth like this until a timeout or something would happen, and I would have the chance to let the camera cool down a little bit more. But I did notice that most of the heat seemed to be in the grip, basically where the battery is. So I'm curious to know if I could get rid of the overheating issues by using a V-mount battery instead. Which is why I'm testing my theory at my nephew's basketball game, where I'll be filming the entire thing with the Sony A6700 in 4K 60 with a V-mount battery kit.
It's a new day, days been new. Been a decade since I made it out of rental. We some owners, baby, we don't got no rent due. My trick, but my wife feel like the trick too. Merry Christmas, hey Saint Nick. What we want get, we on wait list. How we got here doesn't make sense. Have patience, that'll make sense.
I was feeling really good about this during the first quarter, but unfortunately things quickly unraveled after that. And I found myself in the same cycle as last time where I had to turn off my camera every chance I got, and even took the dummy battery out each time, which was super hot by the way. But even then, during the last quarter, I found myself playing the same game of cat and mouse with the overheating automatic shutdowns. This is why paying $400 more for a Sony FX30 makes a lot of sense for sports videographers, because the FX30 has an internal fan and does not put you through any of this nonsense, even in the hottest conditions. So all in all, if you're looking for your next main camera to film all your sporting events with from start to finish, I would not recommend buying the Sony A6700. It's just way too stressful and there's too much heat management involved. The Ulenzi external fan can help, especially that I just saw that they came up with a new version that attaches to the camera a lot better than the suction cups. So it does help, but I haven't used it all game, but from what I understand from reviews and other videos, all it does really is extend the recording time 15, maybe 20%. So not exactly a game changer. But if you're looking for a second camera, one that you can use as your main photography camera and also as your backup video camera, the A6700 would be perfect for that role. And by backup, I don't mean that you only use it when your main camera is broken. I'm talking about using it as a second camera angle when need be, or you could simply leave it on your gimbal ready to go and then grab that gimbal sporadically throughout the game and shoot every time a gimbal shot makes sense. So bottom line, I don't think that the Sony A6700 should be any sports videographer's main camera, but we would all be very lucky to have it as our second camera. For more details about the Sony A6700 and its features, check out the link in the description. Otherwise, let me know in the comments which Sony camera you'd like me to review next, and I'll try my best to make it happen as soon as possible.